Okay, hey, welcome to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. Today we have another Citizen review for you. Now, a little bit about the brand. They were founded back in 1918 by the Japanese as well as Swiss investors. And they eventually settled on the name brand of Citizen Watch Company back in 1930. And basically, Citizen Watch Group owns Miyota, of course, who makes the movements, Belova, Arnold & Son, Frederic Constant, Alpina, and Campanola. So, they've got a lot of other things going on. I know they're mostly just kind of known for their own watches, as well as their movements, being packed into a lot of different micro-brand options, ranging from quite expensive, depending, or, quite affordable. So, one of the nice things about Citizen is that when you do see that made in Japan text across the dial, you can trust it because it is made in Japan, which I think is very, very nice and quite admirable. And you might not be able to see it at this angle, but this is one of their made in Japan pieces. And basically, of course, they're best known for their more affordable quartz offerings. They actually, I think, helped Seiko disrupt the Swiss watch industry back during the quartz crisis. So it wasn't just like Seiko was a one-man job destroying, the Swiss watch industry. There were other brands as well, and Citizen was one of them. And what they were able to do did help that momentum for Seiko. Now, this is the Citizen Promaster NB6004 or 6004-83 Echo. And it's basically a full spec mechanical diver. And of course it has a lot of in-house goodies. And I'm happy to share those with you. So what we'll do is, not zoom the camera out just yet. Why don't I tell you this? This thing, the list price is supposed to be about 925 bucks. But you can find them in between 650 and 850, depending on the dealer where you order it from. I ordered mine from a dealer, I believe it was in Spain, but I believe these are getting more and more available, so you'll probably see prices drop as they do become more available. But with all that said, let's go ahead now, zoom out the camera, get the piece in hand, and take a closer look. All right, guys, as you can see, I love the color palette here. You're seeing a really nice kind of gradient dial, a lot of different gray hues on this titanium. Of course, this is a full titanium diver. It has 46 millimeter diameter with a 15.4 millimeter thickness, which is quite thick, of course. I mean, you look at that profile there and it looks pretty out there, honestly. But then you look at it from head on and it's just like, oh, that is just a bold, chunky diver. And this is the kind of dive watch that people who love dive watches enjoy. Then of course there's people who don't really like dive watches and just like how capable they are, and they just want something that's a lot more mellow. This is not that type of watch. It's a lot more dedicated and tooly, and I dig it. It has a 50.4 millimeter lug to lug, so this is actually quite long, and you can see it lays quite flat as well. It's made out of super titanium, which is just another titanium alloy, a little proprietary from that standpoint, and it does have that Duratec hard coating surface treatment on there. Everything is pretty much fully brushed, if not blasted matte in some spots, and it's a looker, and I really dig it. Now, of course, you do get a sapphire crystal, so you're getting all the goods here from that standpoint. You're getting the inner air coating. You're getting a 60-click unidirectional rotating bezel with a shielded lume pip, but let's hear it. Not the loudest, but man, that is a nice 60-click bezel. Obviously, you're getting tons of grip on, on that bezel. Not a lot of back play. I mean, if anything, it just goes back and it rests in the click. That's all you can really ask for. Obviously not the most legible watch because of all the textures you have on there. The textures tying in from the dial to this bezel insert, and then of course you have the screws there mounted, but then you also have the lume pip, which is a circle, so it can get a little bit confusing, at least when really well lit and things are reflective. But I think underwater it definitely would do a lot better, because then you're relying more so on the lume. Now, what else do we got here? We also do have a screw down crown that's signed, and it has wonderful action, and it is really beautifully knurled and nicely signed. The movement inside, although you can't see it, it's an automatic Citizen Miyota 9051, which has a 4 Hz sweep. It is accurate up to -10 plus 20 seconds a day, and has a 42-hour power reserve, and it works pretty darn well, and I'm digging it. It's been keeping really great time for me, but of course I really don't like to talk too much on you know, an unregulated, at least as far as I know, an unregulated watch in terms of timekeeping, because what I get doesn't necessarily mean that's what you're gonna get. But I will say, for those of you that are wondering, it's keeping very good time. The case back is solid and etched, so you don't get a look at that movement or anything. And honestly, the articulation on this bracelet, you can see it doesn't want to lay flat. Basically it does kind of lock out when you come there. That's not ever gonna change anything on the wrist, but you know, when you want to lay something down, whatever, you are gonna have that kind of propped up on itself, because the links kind of lock in when you try to smush them. And then let's go ahead and get into, man, this sweet textured gradient black grayish dial. It's very nice. You get applied indices, you get the date wheel at 3 o'clock with black font over a silver disc. You're getting painted hands that are loomed. You're getting that proprietary Citizen lume as well, and this one actually glows green versus that signature blue, so I thought interesting choice there. In terms of water resistance, you're getting 20 bar, but it's also diverse 200 meters water resistance, which means that it's ISO certified, which is pretty nice. In terms of the bracelet, it is 22 millimeters at the lug, which is quite large. Solid links, solid end links, pin and collar connecting system, and basically it tapers from about 23.5 down to 20 millimeters on that kind of 3-link style bracelet. And then it does have a push button clasp with a ratcheting adjustment, which I think is really nice, and it's obviously inspired quite a few other brands with its really interesting style. And the nice thing is that it's simple, right? And it works. And it's, I mean, it's probably aesthetically not the most handsome diver's extension, but it works, and also can be used as, you know, a bit of a micro adjust when you're feeling some heat and maybe your wrist is doing a little bit of swelling. So with all that said, let's actually get this piece on a wrist and see how it wears. All right, as you can see, it's a bold wear. That's a big boy. You know, that 46 millimeter diameter, not huge. It's not, I don't think it's even the biggest watch we've ever featured on the channel, and it's probably not the thickest either, but it just has a really great aesthetic about it. Just really overbuilt. I mean, geez, it looks like I got a transformer riding on the wrist, honestly. And with this hard-coated titanium, it definitely has the specs to match something like that. And feeling like a bit of a kind of futuristic adventure timepiece, this thing is definitely up for a good time. So yeah, I think on the wrist, it wears quite nice. It's quite bold. You can see, even though the profile's a bit tall here, it does ride the wrist really well. Even with those longer lug-to-lug dimensions, it does sit very beautifully. And of course, you do have a very nice clasp, which I'm digging. And honestly, the color on this titanium with this coating looks great. I love how fine the brushing is that Citizen does on their watches. Very, very nice. And again, it does work quite bold. I'd say in line with something like a Seiko Tuna. It really is meant to be large. And if you shrunk this design down, I will go ahead and say it probably wouldn't even look as good. It would just be a smaller, very crowded looking watch. And because this is large enough, I think those little design features and everything still mesh well enough. If they did make a smaller version, would I like it? I'm sure I probably would. I just wouldn't want it to be exactly these proportions, but smaller in scale, because I think these proportions work really well for what we have here. I mean, look at that dial. Look at the chapter ring. Look at that orange. It just pops. I really, really dig that. And yeah, it's not something that's for everyone by any means. But for those of you that are big time diver collectors and you just want to have something that you can take out on the water that's going to be ultimately capable and extremely in-house, and something that you won't just see out on anybody's wrist at a party typically, this definitely has a lot of those qualities. So let's actually set up some low light shots, some loom, some transitional lighting, all that stuff leading into closing thoughts. Thanks, guys. All right, we'll go ahead and hit the lights here. As you can see, even with those loom plops being further out and not necessarily as big, I mean, obviously still quite thickly applied, but just not large in terms of mass, it still glows like a champ. But one thing I do like to integrate into these loom shots are low light transition, because you're not always going to be out in the middle of a field enjoying direct sunlight. A lot of times you're going to be coming in and out of a building, maybe walking underneath an overhang, or just spending time in your favorite automobile. And yeah, you're gonna have to look at it in mixed lighting conditions. You're curious to see maybe how those colors render here in less than optimal lighting. And then even if you get into some high contrast lighting here that will typically expose any type of defect, you can see that the light still uniformly just glides beautifully over that brushing. Really quite nice and quite legible. You got the cardinal points there. You can tell where 12 o'clock is. You do have a loom seconds hand. I mean, it just gives you everything you need. And really, I mean, I shouldn't say nothing you don't, because there's still some semi-luxurious feature sets about this watch. I will say that in terms of the design aesthetic, it's a little aggressive considering it's only 200 meters water resistant. And I know that sounds kind of silly because, yeah, humans don't actually go diving 200 meters. But, I mean, the way that this thing looks, it looks like a 500 meter diver, or 1,000 meter, or 2,000 meter, with how thick this is and how much tech there is in it. It would have been really nice, but I mean, at the end of the day, it can be kind of a trade-off sometimes, you know, like you get something that is, you know, 200 meters of water resistance, but it's ISO certified, versus maybe something that's 500 meters of water resistance, but it is just kind of self-contained in terms of the depth rating. So, I mean, it's kind of up to you guys in terms of what your values are. But this thing's awesome. Honestly, on the wrist, it wears like a 46 millimeter diver should. It's bold. It has great wrist presence. In terms of model variables, there's also an off bracelet model that comes on rubber. And then in terms of comparable models, I guess you could say Seiko would be the closest comparable in terms of in-house qualities. But this would be probably the most comparable to some of their more expensive Prospex LX lines, just in terms of how feature-rich this thing is. And of course, it is still in-house and yada, 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 made in Japan, all that good stuff. Now, for me, guys, bottom line is this thing is seriously fully loaded. It's an in-house diver from one of Japan's best, so it's not only loaded in terms of its kind of intrinsic quality, but I think even the perceived quality, just being from a solid brand like Citizen, again, you don't have to be a watch nut to enjoy a titanium Citizen watch. So I think that's cool. And if I could share a little bit with you, then awesome. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you like the video, please do hit like. And if you haven't already, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.